1, 2, Freddie's talking to you. 3, 4, discussing the covers he drew. 5, 6, grab your drawing sticks. 7, 8, interlocking covers are great. 9, 10, he inks in pen.
Live from the Talking Joe Studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey. It's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, where today we will be talking with artist Freddie Williams II. He is an American comic book writer and artist. He first gained attention in 2005 when he began work with DC Comics on the comic series Robin and on the Eisner Award-winning series Seven Soldiers, Mr. Miracle. He has gone on to work on several crossover titles, including Batman, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Batman, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, He-Man, ThunderCats, and Injustice versus Masters of the Universe. But most importantly for us, and what we were talking today, is the extensive work that he has done for IDW on the G.I Joe comic covers, including 3 whopping sets of interlocking covers. But I will not be talking to Freddie alone. As normal, I am joined by a real
I really want to talk Joe with you. It's a real American Tim. American Tim.
Hello, viewers and listeners, and hello, Mark.
Hello, Tim. Now, I've not written him a song, unfortunately. He'll just have to imagine it. Freddie,
Or we could
Freddie.
make one up right now.
Yeah, go on, Tim.
He's the crossover king, drawing most of the crossovers, 80s properties, bashing their heads together. He's Freddie Williams II.
Wonderful. Thank you. I love the real American Tim. That was a great theme song, and thank you for coming up with one for me as well. I feel a part of the group now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. And let's get this out of the way before we start too far. Freddie Williams II. I always sort of ponder to myself when I read your name in the credits, the second element. Can you expand on how that cropped into your name in your credits?
Let's see. So I am the second as far as I'm named after my father. I never knew my father, so it's a weird dynamic that whenever I was a kid, because I never knew my dad, somehow being named after him made me feel more connected to him or felt more interesting or something. So even as a very young kid, I wrote the second, on my name, even on school papers and stuff.
Wow.
And as an adult, that has continued because there is, Scott Williams is a very popular, very prolific inker who, if you're giving cover credits, Williams and Williams, it would be really hard to differentiate us. So Williams II, but then there's J.H. Williams III. So you can get a comic book that would have, J.H. Williams III as a penciler or inker, me as a penciler or inker as the second, and then Scott Williams as the inker. So you could have Williams II, Williams III on the cover credit. I'd love to see that. It was originally because I felt like it made me feel special and connected to my father, who I never knew. Then after that, it was just to hopefully disambiguate me from the other Williams, but then it creates other problems because often I will be miscredited. I'll be Williams III on covers, even though that's J.H. Williams. And even in the Batman Ninja Turtles animated movie, because it made an animated adaptation, they misspelled my last name somehow, where they spelled it Willems in the opening credits. It says based on the comic book series by James Tynion, who's the writer, and Freddie Williams. So they misspelled that. So anyway, that's where I'm the second. I thought it would help clear things up, but it has made things more complicated. So
I was under the impression that a junior is named after the immediate parents. A second might skip a generation, like a grandfather. And then the grandson is the second. Had you considered taking junior?
When I was a kid, my mom actually told me that she wanted me to be a second because she didn't want people calling me a junior. They didn't want that. She didn't want that to become my nickname or something. So I don't know.
Junior.
Roman numeral 2 is such an easier to say nickname. It rolls off the tongue. Roman numeral 2.
Just call me Roman numeral 2.
Your dinner is getting cold.
Yeah. Call me Roman 2. That would be my nickname.
Row 2. Row 2.
Wow.
Row 2.
Motu. Yeah, that's something. So we're going to talk about some G.I Joe covers. And let's start with something relatively fresh and new in our minds. So let's start with the 40th anniversary special, which was, this amazing project where we had 22 pages by 22 plus different artists reinterpreting the silent interlude. So do you want to tell us about how you got involved in the project?
Yeah, so just some history for that issue. When I was in high school, the guy who's probably is like my best friend in high school, a guy named Tyrone Crockett, who I met, he helped teach me how to draw with shapes and stuff like that. He was the best artist in our school. He introduced the original version of this comic to me. So it was the silent issue. He was like, "Did you know there's a comic book that has no words in it?" I think is how he said it. And I was shocked by that. And we looked at it a lot. It was amazing to me that you could tell a story just from visuals. It makes total sense now as an adult. But whenever I was 15 or 14, whatever I was, I was just so used to the idea of it having dialogue that oftentimes would even describe what was happening in the scene you were looking at. So it was so amazing to me that issue really stood out. And I think that it affected a lot of artists like that. Like, wow, you can just have it completely silent and just all visual storytelling and still tell what's going on. So flash ahead to last year, 2021. I think it was around getting close to Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving is late November. I know not everyone celebrates Thanksgiving, but I got an email from one of the editors at IDW, and they asked if I would be interested in drawing one of these pages. Basically, there's a different artist on every single page. And I was, of course, very honored to be involved with it. I asked if we could reinterpret some of the camera angles, and they said as long as it visually, you can tell which page it's homaging or referencing, then feel free to change things up. So that's how I got involved. The only angle that I really changed was the second panel. It was my opinion, looking back after 30 years or whatever it is, of sequential art or something, that the second panel of this page, although very well drawn, basically the shot of Cobra Commander is so small in that second panel, and it's almost the same size as what's in the fourth panel, that I could potentially explore a more dynamic, powerful angle of Cobra Commander to make him closer to the camera and bigger. And it would help hopefully improve or change the eye flow going from panel 1 to 2 to 3. So if you don't mind going back to my version of the page, the eye flow hopefully goes to Cobra Commander, and then the angle of the perspective and the characters that are in the foreground in the bottom part of that panel hopefully lead your eye from panel 1, 2, and then to 3 a little more clearly or easily than the original version. That was my thinking, at least. Everything else, I basically stuck to almost copying directly what the previous artist had drawn, and just with a little bit of, in panel 4, I moved Cobra Commander to be facing the camera a little bit more instead of being just the flat on angle of his back. Anyway, that's how I was involved. I drew it in about a day and a half. It was pretty quick because I did pencils and inks. And the inking style is a very different style that I normally draw in, but it's a much more open style. So there's not a bunch there's detail, but there's not a ton of gray values and noodling for the rendering. It's more like implying shapes with just black ink. So, but I love to draw it, so I was happy to.
Freddie, up until this point, you had only drawn covers for G.I. Joe and Hasbro properties. When the editor approached you, was your response, "No, I'm a big shot. I only do G.I. Joe covers. I'm too important to do pages"? No. Because it was a big surprise to see you gracing us on the insides, us readers, with your presence after just covers for so long.
No, I mean, to me, comic books are sequential artwork. That's what I enjoy the most about drawing comics. I, of course, enjoy drawing covers, but I mostly enjoy drawing the sequential work. What I just described about eye flow and stuff, all of that is the stuff that I enjoy. That's the puzzle part of figuring out layouts or whatever that I enjoy. And as a reader, I enjoy the intimacy that's created where there's some sort of a dialogue, an invisible dialogue that time travels, because it's, I 30 years ago, this comic book came out and I'm still enjoying it 30 years later. And there's people who have never seen it before and they're getting to enjoy it. There's an intimacy to it, and there's like a way to trick the reader into going faster if you want them to, or a way to slow them down if it's important. So no, I mean, and I actually have G.I Joe stories that I'd like to pitch to them, to draw the full sequential thing, depending on. There's I have 100 projects in my mind, not just with G.I Joe. I'm just saying it's hard to know what you're going to be doing next, because sometimes there's things that come across your desk you don't want to say no to. But I'd love to draw more sequential work for them.
It, based on volume, it feels like Batman and Ninja Turtles must be favorites of yours, having drawn 18 issues across 3 crossover miniseries, and then more broadly, 80s properties, He-Man and ThunderCats, and currently, I guess, 90s properties, Power Rangers and Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
You are staying in this very particular lane. So what is it about these characters and properties?
I mean, they're awesome. That's the main thing.
Next question.
Yeah. They're
Okay.
awesome. Case closed. I mean, the part of it is just, when contracts are figured out in this way, it's like two participating really big multinational companies that once they've agreed to do a crossover, that's like the biggest hurdle. And then whenever they were wanting to find an artist, I think they could have their pick of anyone. And so I feel very lucky when they approach me to get to draw one of these things. So far I've never turned anything down. The one that got away is a He-Man Ninja Turtles crossover. That was more of a combination. That wasn't me. I had agreed to in late 2019. That was what I was supposed to draw next after I finished up Batman Ninja Turtles Volume 3. The next one was He-Man Ninja Turtles, and it had already been greenlit, and then it got put on hold, and then it got greenlit again for like 4 days, and then it got canceled right at the beginning of March 2020 when there was a pandemic. I'm sure you heard of that. But anyway, now the publishing rights for He-Man has gone over to Dark Horse and stuff. So I'm hoping one day we can rejuvenate that. But basically, these types of crossovers, they're touching a part of my childhood and adolescence that I'm really into, and I crossed over a lot of these properties myself. So I don't know. I'm just really lucky that they keep asking me to do it. I really lucked into drawing Batman Ninja Turtles. That was very successful financially and just fan reaction and stuff, which I'm happy about. And then that led to, every other crossover. So it's a momentum, and I'm really lucky to be. I mean, I don't think I could have ever planned to be in this very specific narrow niche or groove, but I'm really happy to find myself here.
Because you're now the person who has done the most of these.
I don't know. I don't know. There might be statistics somewhere. I'm not sure.
It's on your website. It's the crossover,
guy. Yeah, I've heard that so many times at conventions. People will come over and say, "Oh, you're at this show. Oh, yeah, you're the crossover guy." Yeah,
but you're not, to use a movie term, you're not concerned about being typecast as if you could only do crossovers. You could only do media tie-ins from the 80s and 90s. You are not concerned about being pigeonholed.
I mean, there's some element of that in my brain where I realize that that's a possibility. But I don't know. I guess I'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I just drew like a one shot for DC for their Dark Crisis crossover. That now, I mean, it's a crossover inside of their company, and it's a big event book, and there was like this huge fight scene and stuff. So I'm hoping that the skill set that I've shown here is that I can manage a lot of different characters, real big fight scenes. I'm paying attention to what makes those characters cool, and I'm not making some of them look yeah, I just drew them on the page. It's good enough. Let's keep going. That sort of thing. So in the same way that, and I'm currently drawing some covers for Power Rangers Ninja Turtles Volume 2. The point that I'm making is that the same thing that makes me appealing to those company owners or editors would also make me seem still appealing at DC or Marvel, because I can just handle a big complex thing that's happening, some big event, or even if it's just within their characters.
Mhm.
So, and the Dark Crisis thing, that deadline was nuts too, but that was about, I finished it about 2 weeks ago, and the fight scene said like there's 45 villains and 28 heroes. Not even joking. It was some numbers like that, and you don't have to draw all of them, but draw as many as you can. And it was just endless characters everywhere. So maybe that's the more concerning typecast, is like, draw so many characters that you die at your table. You know, like that's what the instruction is basically. I don't know.
Maybe if you get a good relationship with an editor, you can make a request for a mini series with a solo character.
Can I draw Nightwing? Well, you started off doing Robin, didn't you? So
and let me tell you, the time commitment to drawing Robin infiltrating someplace in the sewers, it's just one character in the shadows with some pipes. That time commitment is much smaller than drawing 100 characters every page per panel. So there, it's been a real growth where like the artwork now absorbs every part of my waking time, you know, to get it done. So I love it. I love drawing very complex things, but it sure does take a long time.
How much of your artwork is on paper, is still on paper? Because you wrote a book for DC Comics called The DC Comics Guide to Digitally Drawing Comics.
Right.
And I mean, I'm sitting at a tablet right now, and I'm holding my stylus. I'm looking at my computer monitor here, and right here I'm looking at my Wacom. So I am very comfortable either drawing on the computer or starting on paper, scanning it, and finishing in the computer. So are you still using paper?
Yeah. So I'm working. There's a couple chapters in that book that I wrote about working in a hybrid workflow, which sounds similar to what you're probably doing. So I'm still using Adobe Photoshop, just like described in the book. And whereas a lot of people have moved to Clip Studios or to Procreate or other programs, I'm still using Photoshop and working out my layouts digitally. And then just like I described in the book, printing out my structure in either light gray or blue or black, depending on the type of rendering that I'm working in, onto my artboard. That way the artboard is nice and fresh and it hasn't been erased over 100 times, and then inking traditionally from there after I've hopefully done a really good job on the composition and layout and that sort of thing. So occasionally it works the other way, where I'll start something on paper and then I'll take it into the computer and goof around with it and then go back to paper. Recently there was back in 2020, when we were in the early parts of the pandemic thing, we were stuck in Australia at a convention. We were stuck with friends, in quotes, stuck. We were there in Australia for a convention. Then Sydney, Australia, and the US was shutting down its borders for the pandemic. And so our flights kept getting delayed. So we were there for an extra week and a half. And during that time, it was like, my comic book project has just been canceled. I know all conventions are going to be canceled. What do I do? And so I just had a bunch of paper and I just started sketching stuff, just, you know, it's therapeutic, as you probably know. It's nice to just draw and not have a lot of thoughts racing through your brain. But anyway, one of the layouts that I drew, somebody later recently just commissioned me to finish that. So what I did was to change some of the proportions around. Like I scanned in the art, then digitally altered some of the composition, then printed out a piece of paper with those changes, then relight boxed it onto the same piece of paper where I changed some of the proportions of the characters, and then executed it traditionally the rest of the way from there. So I'm in and out digital quite often, and then onto paper back and forth. So, but it's usually digital composition, printed out lightly onto the artboard, and then executed on paper from there.
And then you have an object to sell.
Yeah, but also there's a that is true, and more than half of my income comes from original art sales and stuff. So it's an important element to have an actual physical piece of artwork. But just from an enjoyment level, working on a piece of paper where there's like a more of a give and take, the texture of the paper sometimes affects how you're, if working in ink wash, which is what you're showing on the screen here. Sometimes working on a piece of paper, the texture of the paper will change how the ink wash comes out or the angle that you have your board at. And it's a way that it's within a controlled realm of possibilities, but it's not exactly what I had in mind. So there's a random element that comes into things. Sometimes that can be bad, like where you spill something on the paper, which I've done. But most of the time there's an enjoyable tactile interface with it and stuff. So the paper part is fulfilling creatively and good financially as well.
Mm-hmm. So your G.I Joe, your more recent G.I Joe covers, that would have followed that same sort of workflow of kind of figuring it out digitally, mm-hmm. and then printing it, and then sort of doing the fine details and the washes and all the rest of it.
Yeah, executing it traditionally from there. So if it's okay, I actually brought the original. So I have a story.
Hold it up.
Well, I have a story about how these interlocking covers came into being. So Tom Waltz, who is he's one of the editors and writers at IDW, and I've worked with him on a whole bunch of stuff. Like he wrote a bunch of stuff, like over 100 issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and that's how I got connected with him. But a bunch of other stuff too. So this is he had contacted me about doing a 5-part interlocking cover, and I had come up with 3 different layout ideas. Now let me make sure I fold this back and not actually mess anything up here. But the reason I brought this out, or I wanted to show you guys this, is because a very strange thing happened as far as how I got to draw the rest of the covers. So on January 5th or 6th here in the US in 2021, something weird happened at the capital of the US, mm-hmm. where some weird people like went and got inside of our capital and stuff. Yep. And you can see on all of this, there's like this, the theme of drawing this, which I drew in late 2020, was G.I. Joe is defending the Capitol, and it's got like the Senate House and the Capitol building, and it's got the monument and stuff. All of those things were like to show that they're defending the Capitol against Cobra. And then the weird people did something on January 5th and tried to get into the Capitol, and it spooked Mattel, where they felt like, we don't know if we want to put out the comic book with these buildings, because we don't know how this is going to, it's just weird. It's a weird time to have those buildings on the cover. So they had asked me in early January, like right after it happened, if for the published covers, if I could draw and replace digitally, like this would be where the Senate House was, this is where the Capitol was, and then this random skyscraper down here was put where the monument was. And so the printed version of the cover doesn't have the Capitol building and the Senate House and all that stuff. It has these random, just typical looking buildings. And they had asked me if I could do it, and if so, I'd have to do it very quickly. And I said, my reply was, I'm happy to draw it, and I'm not going to charge any extra, but on the condition that I can draw another 5-part interlocking cover for you guys. And they were like, and they said, okay, great. And so that's how so it leveraged me, or I was able to leverage that into drawing. So this one, I just sold this original, the 5-part interlocking for this. So I just got the printed comics and take these together real quick. Hopefully I can unfold these. All right. So this was the cover. This was the 5-part interlocking cover that they let me draw next. And this has Serpentor in the middle. Serpentor is awesome. And it's kind of shiny, but it's got all of the villains in the background, a bunch of the G.I. Joes in the foreground. And I drew this in like February of 2021, something like that. And I thought that would be the end of it. I had drawn the layout for a third. Yeah, there we go. That's the ink wash piece, which sold about a month ago or something. So physically, I don't have it anymore. And then a couple of weeks later, I got an email from Tom, and he said, okay, we've actually pushed out the return of Serpentor. He's not going to be coming back in this story arc. He's going to be coming out in the next story arc. Do you have time to do another 5-part interlocking cover? And I said, I sure do. And I'm happy to draw it. And the other layout that I had come up with, way back in 2020, when they asked me to do the first one, I'd come up with 3 different layouts. And these are the 3 layouts, the 2 you've just seen. And in this one, which I'll pull out.
And the Serpentor one that's on the screen at the moment, was that just out of your head as an interesting layout, or was it something they suggested that probably we're going to have a return of Serpentor in the book, so it'd be fun to have him at the centerpiece of the covers?
It was kind of a coincidence where I had drawn the layout and I had drawn just a an empty figure in the center where Serpentor is now. And I wrote on the rough, can we put Serpentor here or something? Because that's who I pictured in my brain, was like Serpentor, because he's so cool. He's like one of the coolest villains and visually and stuff, that I would love for it to be him. But I put in the email, I said, it can be anyone. I mean, we could put whatever the big reveal is in the next arc or whatever. And the alternative would be just to have Cobra Commander's face or helmet, where there is no character there. And they were like, no, actually, we are bringing back Serpentor. And I was like, awesome. Like, I didn't even know if he was an option or not. That's who my top choice would be. But then whenever they pushed it back, or pushed it ahead rather, where there would be another story arc in between, this was the other 5-part interlocking cover layout. So let me get this one. And this one is an homage to the G.I Joe movie. It's got so it's got the Statue of Liberty in the background, and a bunch of the same actions that happens, like as far as the Cobra ship that's deploying all the pods.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same angle. I basically
silhouette.
Yeah, I stitched together just as much stuff. Although Snake Eyes in the animation, he doesn't kick the guy through the windshield.
He flips him out.
Yeah. He flips him out. But visually, it was, I don't know how to convey that as easily in a single image as a collage or whatever. So
we can be very specific what the homage is, because the opening sequence to the animated movie from 1987 was storyboarded by Larry Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So he came up with these visuals. And
he did an amazing job. I think that is one of, if not the best openings to probably anything. It's so strong just by itself, but it does a great job of showing the reader or the viewer, I guess, what the roles of the heroes and the villains are, what they stand for. The theme song is awesome as well. It really gets you pumped up. The first time I saw this movie, so this to me is probably my primary, the G.I Joe, the animated movie, is my primary interaction and fan connection to what G.I Joe is. I had some of the toys. One of my, what would that be? My step uncle, that's what it would be. My stepdad's brother had some of the vehicle toys from one of his kids who had already grown up. He was like older than me and had gone off to college and stuff. So he gave me some of those around the same time as the movie that came out. So I had like some of the toys, and then I had the movie, and the movie made such a big splash in my mind. I watched it dozens of times whenever I was 12 or 13 or whatever it was. And then whenever I got it on VHS. And then since I've been an adult, I watch it quite often as deadline fuel, like late at night, whenever you've got a long night drawing. So you just want something in the office going on, to kind of keep you company. And it's an amazing movie. And I did not know who it was that had storyboarded stuff until about maybe 4 or 5 months ago, where I think her name is Diana Davis. She's she's like a special consultant for G.I Joe. And her and I were having some interactions, and whenever I started posting this, she had shared it and tagged him. And then she let me know who had storyboarded the opening. And so I wrote him a little fan email or fan message that just said, that is so cool. It has made such a big difference, like in my psychology and stuff. It's so well done. And also knowing that there was no CGI, which still takes a lot of skill to do CGI stuff, but it's all hand drawn, complex geometry of those little bubble pod Cobra ships or whatever they're called. I don't know, wonderful. And this was like a little homage to that. So
yeah, Toei, the animation studio in Japan, certainly had its A team on this.
Is that a pun about the A team?
No. I mean,
I agree with you.
Hey, hold on. Was Barry Baracus an animator?
You know what, Freddie? I look forward to your G.I. Joe A-Team 6-issue miniseries.
That would work pretty well.
Or since you have an affinity for G.I. Joe animation, I look forward to your 4-issue Saturday Morning Adventures animated G.I. Joe Mr. T animation crossover pitch.
He would fit in so well. B.A. Baracus or Mr. T would fit in very well as a G.I. Joe special ops character. Like, he has that same sort of look where he's like a covert operative, but he of course stands out in the crowd, but it still works anyway. And even face disguising himself, and I don't know, whatever, it would work.
So there was no problem at IDW that this was referring to G.I. Joe animation, which is a different continuity than the comics. You were wide open for that?
Yeah, I don't remember them mentioning. I don't even think they gave me any notes for this. It was just like, I made it clear that it was. I even called the rough animated movie homage, I think is what I labeled it, to help make it specific so we could talk about it. And they were totally cool with it. So yeah, I mean, as long as I was drawing the modern continuity versions of the characters, there's a character who I've only seen referred to as female Snake Eyes. I don't know if that's actually her name in the comics or not, but
Dawn.
She's the one who's kicking the Crimson Guard there in the center.
Her name is Dawn Moreno.
Oh, okay. All right.
As Snake Eyes has died, she has taken that code name.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, but there was a while where there was an overlap where she still looked like this, and Snake Eyes was in the continuity. He just didn't have. I saw they would go back and forth with the continuity of the visor. What's up?
Close. So there's another character. So Snake Eyes died before Dawn showed up, but there's another character who had been like a civilian in the original Marvel continuity, and he was given a codename Throwdown, and then he was scarred and got Snake Eyes' memories. Right, Mark? Am I getting this mixed up? He was trained. Dawn has memories,
and Snake and Sean got his physicality.
Okay,
so,
and he's been given the codename Throwdown, but it's a little bit like how right now there are 3 different Spider-Men, and there are like 2 different Batmen. There's a Batman in New York and a Batman in Gotham. So right now there are 2 living Snake Eyeses. One and in the storyline, the Joes just call them by their first names.
Okay, yeah,
Sean and Dawn.
That's great.
I'm not chuckling. I think it's all great. I'm not chuckling to make fun of it. I think it's great.
Yeah, and that's more information than I know about it. And usually I just get a summary outline of what a cover might be about. But for these, because I told you how I came about drawing all 3 of the interlocking covers, was not very story specific, other than the specific mention of Serpentor, his return and stuff like that. But usually I just get like a 1 paragraph outline, and then later they'll send me a PDF of the whole book, just so I can double check for my credits. And then if you're also, because they'll send it to every single person that's involved in the book, just to make sure that anything you're involved with, you're credited correctly. And also it's a final pass if anybody sees something obvious, like a word balloon covering a face, or just whatever it is. So you have like 3 days to give your final notes. It's like either speak now or forever hold your peace. And so those are the only 2 times that I'm involved with either of the story elements of it. So in any case, this specific character, the one who I've only seen referred to as female Snake Eyes until this very minute that you told me, like, she wasn't a part of the cartoon. So as long as I was drawing the modern versions of the characters, I don't think they didn't seem to care.
And so did they give you a like with Dawn, female Snake Eyes here, did they give you a list of characters that they'd like to see included, or was it completely carte blanche? Because there's a few kind of slightly obscure characters that we were kind of squinting at and going, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah. Back in 2020, whenever they approached me about drawing the first one, they gave me like a big reference dump and they were like, please put Snake Eyes and some of I can't remember who it was, but like there was a couple of characters they wanted as like main characters, like bigger figures on different covers. So you wouldn't want to put like the most obscure characters as like the centralized figure, at least unless it was story significant, and it wasn't here. So, but then the rest of the reference dump was like, and use some of these characters too. And so some of the more obscure characters was just because I thought they either looked cool or because I thought that they would balance out design wise or color wise with other things that I was doing in the same composition. So a lot of it was me just like when I was a kid, just grabbing a toy that looked cool and then using, playing with that one. So
Nice.
Should we, Mark, I'm sure you want to ask more about the Real American Hero covers, but I do feel like we should at least mention the first strike covers that our
let's
guest
do it.
drew.
There's Batman. Future Mark here. I'm interrupting to explain for the audio-only listeners that on the screen I'm showing Freddie, it's a picture of his Batman black and white statue that had recently come out. And back to past Mark. I put Batman in because I just think the black and whites are very cool. I've got over on that shelf over on the other side of the room. I've got a shelf full of black and white Batman,
black and white statues. So, yeah, this one was back in 2019. DC Comics was structured very differently. They've had like 2 or 3 restructurings since then, but they had a special collectibles or something division, and they approached me about designing a statue. I designed it, and then everything in the world happened to delay it, including a pandemic and right. 2 or 3 restructurings. So in any case, it just came out at the beginning of August, but actually the ones that I've ordered have still not arrived yet. Like that's how far behind they are on shipping and stuff. So my wife Kiki did get me one that she gave to me on our anniversary and surprised me with. I don't know how she got it. I don't want to know. Okay?
When you say the ones you ordered, shouldn't DC have sent you a comp?
You would think so.
Okay.
I don't know. I because at the time the special the statue division was supposed to do that, and since they don't have that, I think that because I've asked them about it, and it's just like the email is just kind of hanging in limbo. It's very strange. It's very. I don't think there's a clear protocol. So
I know that DC is good about shipping comps of comic books and graphic novels.
Yes, but I've always gotten those. So, but this is just a different weird experience, and since it's no longer them. They've like everything's been outsourced or contracted through McFarlane Toys, which they do a great job. But the statue looks great, but I think it is just made like somewhere out there. It's someone's responsibility to do it, but no one knows whose, that sort of thing. But yeah, this was. And I'm not sure do you have another slide where it shows like all of the 30 poses that I did as well? Because I
only got those 2.
Okay. There was a page of like kind of just slightly more detailed, like sort of contour gesture drawings where I'd come up with a bunch of ideas for what a statue could be of Batman. And so like the one that I had my heart set on was he was almost floating on a cloud of bats. There was like probably 30 bats all coming out from the bottom of his cape, like they would be dispersing into bats. And that was the one that me and Trevor, the one who was my contact at DC, now he's at NECA. He does other toy designs. We're working on some other stuff together now. And he was like, this is the one I would love, but my sculptors would hate me. They would revolt. He said they would revolt if I made them sculpt this. And the amount of small bats that I wanted just wouldn't work. I guess at this size, you'd have to have like 18-inch tall, sculpt or something. So
instead of 30, let's go with 1.
Yeah, just 1. Can we just have 1? Can we just have 1 on his hand?
It's almost inverted. The bat here is floating on a cloud of Batman.
Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that.
Floating on a cloud of fingers.
Just a single his middle finger.
So in the not Real American Hero Marvel continued Larry Hama continuity in the sort of the Chuck Dixon verse or the IDW continuity of G.I. Joe. I think I missed that you did a cover for the Paul Allure series, which Mark's got
sort of the back end of what people call the Chuck Dixon verse before all of the Transformers stuff happens. So I think this cover here, issue 12 from that series, was your first in on G.I. Joe. Is that right?
This
I
was
remember-
the second cover I drew, but it might have been the first one that they published. There was another one. I think the first one I drew was where Cobra Commander was standing with his hands like on his hips, kind of like Superman, and there was a reflection of him as a different. Oh, there we go. I think that's the first one I drew. I could be wrong, but I think I drew this first, and then the other one was second. But they might have been published in reverse order.
These are both. Do I see a tiny RI on the top left, Mark?
Yes,
these
you
are
do.
these are retailer incentives. Okay.
Yeah, most of the covers that I've drawn are usually retailers' incentives, which for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's usually like it incentivizes retailers to order at least 10 copies of the regular cover, and then they can buy one of these more rare covers. It's something like that. Sometimes it's like a 1 in 10 or a 1 in 20, or I've even seen 1 in 50 variants that I've been involved with where it's, they're really trying to incentivize the retailers to buy a bunch of them so that they can get these more and more rare covers.
What struck me looking at these earlier covers, alongside some of the more recent stuff, is that the I don't know if this is just a style shift over time or just a choice as you approach different projects, that these are sort of less of the wash, more of the contrasting black and white pen and ink.
I think this cover is a good example of me dabbling, and I still do, like the Dark Crisis stuff I just did for DC is all in pen and ink, so there's no gray tones. It's all in individual lines. But this is a cover where I'm exploring both styles, where the reflection in blood or whatever that red liquid is below him is in ink wash. You can't say it's blood. It's got to be like red oil or something. It's red kerosene. I don't know. It's Jello. But the style is like a gray tone in the reflection. And it just depends on the project. Sometimes I think I'm probably most known for drawing in ink wash, but I was transitioning around this time. I did like a Conan 8-page short story. That was the first time I had drawn a sequential story in an ink wash style. And that was for Dark Horse back then when they had the publishing rights to Conan. And I think this was probably the same year, maybe 2013 or 2014, something like that, I think.
Do you have those First Strike covers, Mark?
Yeah, I'm just getting to them next. It's a crossover. It's a big one.
So viewers, listeners, after the big Revolution crossover, which was all of the Hasbro properties, there was a smaller crossover that was more focused on G.I Joe and Transformers. Although there's Matt Tracker and Rom, and Freddie, you did the regular covers. You did the A covers for these.
And this was I came up with. So originally it was called Insurrection. The series was called Insurrection, and then they changed it to First Strike. And I'm not sure. I had labeled all of my pages Insurrection, like all of my files were named incorrectly eventually, because Insurrection was the original title. And they were like, we would love it if you could draw the interiors as well, because I was just coming. I know that this was in between. There was something where I had a couple of, like a month or 2 months in between, I think, Batman Ninja Turtles and He-Man ThunderCats, I think, so maybe in 2016-ish. It's all kind of run together, but that they were like, we would love for you to draw the whole thing, but would you be cool drawing covers? And I was like, definitely. So this, my relationship with IDW has evolved, where I've gotten to know more and more of the editors and stuff there. And I really like working on the types of properties that they have and drawing. Rom the Space Knight, Mask, Transformers, and G.I Joe. That actually would have been a crossover I would have loved to draw on if I had more time and whatever. But oh, sorry, I just accidentally adjusted my desk, so my camera might have jumped up and down. Sorry about that.
I was wondering, is that an animal? A child coming to the room?
No, I tend to fiddle whenever I'm talking and stuff. So I was fiddling with the switch and accidentally activated it. Sorry.
Excellent. Does that mean that you sometimes have a standing desk and you're able to? Very good.
This is the standing desk. I'm just not currently standing, but I can raise it up to a standing height. I think what it's really good at is if you've been, I tend to hunch for a little while and then I'll really raise it up. So I'm sitting up really, like where my posture is like the inverted idea of hunching, where it's 20 torquing myself.
Mhm.
And then I'll stand for a little bit, just adjusting it throughout the day so that I'm not hopefully giving myself repetitive, I don't know, like over time you can give yourself too bad a posture or hurt your knees or something. So giving it some variety. So
Yeah, bad back is the enemy of the artist, isn't it? So
mhm.
that sounds like absolutely the right thing to be doing. So you think, was it a set of, am I remembering 4, 6 for first
5.
5? Well, on average, I was right.
Right. If you averaged out my answers, I was correct. Yeah, there was some large cosmic bear in there. I don't know. There was a whole bunch of characters. It seemed like a pretty wild crossover. So
Yeah, and I guess is the sort of the marching order for these covers, right? These are the guys to include on this particular cover, or did you get a chance to see like a script and try and capture a moment? Or
I drew these all at the same time within the same week or maybe week and a half or something like that, and they just gave me an idea of what was happening in the series. And in comics, there's something that I call, so there's story specific covers. That's one way to go, and sometimes editors will request that. Then other times there's something that's called iconic covers, which are they're more just timeless, or they're not specifically attached to any story events in that issue. Usually you want to, like, you wouldn't want to draw Optimus Prime on the cover unless he actually appears in the issue, but for the most part it's just kind of not connected to the storyline. It just stands on its own. And all of these, so six issues, all of these were more of the iconic. I just knew the types of characters they were going to have, and then I came up with maybe like 15 rough layout ideas and then emailed those to the editors, and then they picked out 6 from those to use as these covers. It was something like that, and then I drew them all in the same cluster of work.
Short order. And I bet you made some UK Action Force fans happy with having a Baron Ironblood there on a cover, which doesn't happen too frequently.
Hey, Optimus Prime is really big on that cover. Just somehow he got hit with one of his stabs. He got gigantic in that one. He's monolithically huge.
And then after First Strike, you came back to the G.I Joe brand with the Paul Allor. I don't know what we call the discontinuity. Is it what do they call it in the trade, Tim? The trade paperback.
What is it? World on Fire? Something on Fire.
Yeah, I think that's
it's right. Where Cobra has actually successfully taken over, and now G.I Joe is like a resistance movement.
I was lazily going to call it the Allure verse.
I think that's probably better than easier to describe, at least. I have it in my files as Bobby's G.I. Joe, and then the other ones were regular series. So Bobby was Bobby Curnow. He was the editor for Ninja Turtles, but he also edited this series. And because he's the one who approached me about drawing these covers. So that's how I got connected with these. It was like different versions of them. So all the characters did not look like the regular series or the ones that I was used to, drawing. So, and here's another mix of the pen and ink and the ink wash stuff, as far as stylistically. So, when it's colored, it kind of balances out or kind of mushes together. Yeah. But as far as the original artwork, there's a hopefully clear distinction between the background elements of hacking, which is an ink wash, and then the more actiony figure is more all pen and ink work.
Yeah, popping in in the cleaner style.
Yeah. So there's nothing bad in this code, but I created all the code in the background.
All right.
So there's nothing bad. There are hidden messages though. It's stuff like where it says Cobra and then server security, and then I think I made like weird like hashtag instead of an H, and then so it's like that says the word hack, HACK, yeah. And there's just a whole bunch of stuff like that in the background where there's names and words. That's actually code from the IDW G.I. Joe website, though. I copied the HTML code and then stuck a bunch of other stuff in there too to make it not identical to their code. But that's where I got the code from. Boom. And then I just dressed it up with other stuff.
Oh, nice. So this is like all of it coming together. The washes, the cleaner
and
ink
then
style, and then the digital on top. So yes, it's the whole package.
It's everything all stuck together. Yeah, it's elite hacking. As you can tell by all the code.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you actually got to do a cover that was never actually used because they cancelled the book before they got to use it. This one with Cobra Commander with his fist in the air. Yeah,
he's supposed to be giving a very compelling speech, like some historical figure, Hitler maybe.
Or Serpentor.
Yeah,
he gives some good
Serpentor,
speeches.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, this one was in 2020 for the National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And it was a very fast turnaround. Luckily, it wasn't that complex of a drawing, but I did a couple layouts and they needed it. It's like they approached me on like a Thursday evening, needed it by the following Monday or something. And it was, I did pencils, inks, and colors. Most of the other stuff you've seen has been other people coloring it, usually Jeremy Colwell.
Okay.
And with this, it was do this as lickety split, cancel whatever you got over the weekend and just, get to it immediately. So.
Was this issue connected to issue 7 of the Paul Allure series, which got a lot of attention and went to a second printing? It's the cover where Scarlet is leaning forward and she's holding someone's hand, like she's in a hospital, like comforting someone.
I'm not sure. I know it was Roadblock describing his PTSD and thoughts of suicide from what he's seen as a soldier, but I'm not sure actually what the cover looks like. It probably is though. And I do know that this was like an ad that they put, and they also printed them as a bunch of posters, but I'm not sure where the posters went. I don't know who they handed them out to, but because this would have been during the pandemic. So I don't think it was some big meet and greet. Maybe they like mailed them out to VAs or something, VA hospitals or something.
We hope that as G.I. Joe makes a transition to a new publisher, that you will make yourself known to the powers that be there as someone who might want to contribute to G.I. Joe at a new publisher.
Yeah. Do you know who they are going to? I mean, I'm asking you because I actually don't know. Okay.
So the reported rumor is that it's going to Skybound, but that's not been officially confirmed anywhere. So whether that happens and whether and when that might be announced, we don't know. But that's where the internet rumor mongering is pointing at the moment. So when IDW finishes at the end of the year, that there'll be a new home shortly after that. But should find out soon, I think.
What were you going to say, Tim?
Oh, I was going to say there are no surprises, right? You don't have like a stealth variant cover for issue 300 for IDW that IDW hasn't solicited yet. You have contributed your final image of G.I. Joe
to my knowledge. Yeah, so IDW has also gone through several rounds of restructuring. The last couple of years have been very weird for comic books, but and at the time, whenever I was drawing all these were mainly for Tom Waltz, the editor. At the time, he had been put into a position as a senior editor, and I think he's still a senior editor, but I don't know if he's still over these. And then after I drew all these, and I found out that there was like on the rumor mill that Transformers and G.I. Joe were not going to be at IDW anymore, I had reached out and said, I don't know what the last issue is going to be, but I'd love to draw some variant covers. And there was like, I've followed up a few rounds of that and nothing's come of it. So I'm not sure why that is, but I know that there's different editors in those positions and maybe they just have other artists lined up, or maybe they're not a fan of my art. Who knows?
I think they ran out of time. I think planning for issue 300 just needed to happen. And as I own a comic book store, and we are about to place our orders for issue 300. So I have seen on an order form, and then we as fans who have access to the internet have seen the regular and the variant covers.
Sort of what's what.
But I'm hoping that unpublished issue 12 cover for the Allure verse, if that were just to show up as a pinup at the end of 300, it's like, hey, here's a Freddie Williams II cover that we didn't get to publish. I'd be fine with that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I would love for that to see print. And whenever because I was contracted by IDW, by Bobby, the editor specifically, to draw that among like 5 or 6 other of the Bobby, the Bobby verse or the Allure verse. That once I finish them, eventually it's kind of up to them on how they would use it later on. And if I would love for it to see print. I still get a real big thrill out of seeing, comic books or posters or whatever that have my art statue or whatever that have my artwork connected to it. I'm still very excited for that. And because there's usually a few months in between whenever I create it to when it's actually sees some sort of physical manifestation, there's like just enough time for me to kind of forget that I drew it. And then I see it and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I love that. It's like it gets me excited again. If I drew it and immediately was published, I'd probably just be like, whatever, because my brain is just saturated with it already. But it's nice to have a little bit of break there. But yeah, I'd love to see that in print somewhere, some point.
But before we go, where can people find you and buy your stuff, Freddie?
Yeah, freddieart.com is the main hub where I have a bunch of artwork and sketchbooks and all this stuff. And there's a ton of stuff there that's pretty good resolution if you just want to look through it. It doesn't cost anything to look through it. And then, of course, there's stuff there for sale. But there's also, I am Freddie Art on almost all of my social media. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, I'm pretty sure I'm Freddie Art or Freddie Williams. But that's the main place. I have a pretty active social media interaction. So I post quite often on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. So. And also, I just want to say thank you guys very much for having me on, and thanks for being
thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you. So it's fun chatting with you guys about it. And if any of you, I'm sure, the type of audience that you have probably have already seen the animated movie, but if you haven't seen it recently, rewatch it. It still holds up. It's really strong. I wanted to ask. This is like the worst time to probably ask this. Is there, in fact, footage of Globulus getting stabbed in the eye with that time turner worm with the spike on it? I swear, but this might be a Mandela effect thing. I swear I saw that once where it actually entered his eye, where Falcon has grabbed it and basically hit Globulus over his own shoulder because he's being choked out. I swear I've seen it before, but I cannot find the actual impact of it inserting into his eye, but I thought I saw it.
I'm sure I've heard people discuss this before and thinking it might be Nelson Mandela.
We'd have to track down a film print, which is almost impossible. Okay. On home video, I'm certain the answer is no.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the only way I've ever seen it was on home video. So I really, anyway. All right. Thank you. The search continues. I'll eventually hopefully find it one day. I don't know.
So with that eye gouging bombshell, we will leave it there.
Thank you, Freddie.
Thanks,
Thank you, Freddie. Thank you, Tim. And that is us done. But remember that
nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.